Hey guys, Richard Kimchi here. And so today, what we're going to be doing is to install or deploy the application load balancer controller on EKS. And also, we're going to be setting up the OIDC provider on, on AWS as well. And so we're basically going to be setting up this to ensure very important processes takes place in the EKS cluster. So take for instance, when you try to expose an application on EKS or Kubernetes, it's kind of like a little bit clunky. So what you want to do is to have an ALB controller that actually watches for ingress and events and then provisions an ALB or an NLB depending on the kind of traffic that it receives, right? So what we're going to do is first of all ensure that we have the EKS cluster deployed. And if you are actually looking into my environment right now, I'm just gonna go into I'm gonna put EKS here. Just gonna search for EKS. And when I click into the EKS, okay. So when I click into EKS, and we're currently on Oregon, which is here as verse 2. You can see I have in the cluster. Okay, so the workflow is gonna be that we create uh, a, a cluster, an EKS cluster, and after creating the EKS cluster, we proceed to setting up the OIDC provider for that cluster, and then we go ahead to start creating service accounts, assigning a role to it, assigning the policy, attaching a policy to it, and then proceed to deploying using Hem to deploy the 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 ALB controller. Okay, so just a quick one. What is actually the ALB controller? So I'm just going to go through some documentation so we can see what the ALB controller is, right? I already gave a quick overview, but I feel maybe if we see it, it's going to be better for us to. Okay, so I'm just going to click into this one. This is like the first we're seeing here. And this is from this Kubernetes Special Interest Group, right, the SIGs. So it's just talking about the a Kubernetes controller for ELB, so Elastic Load Balances, right? So this is just a smooth description of what the ALB does. So the ALB load balancer controller, right, is a controller to help manage the Elastic Load Balancer for Kubernetes cluster. So it satisfies the Kubernetes ingress resources by provisioning ALB, right, and also satisfy the Kubernetes services resources by provisioning an NLB, right? So it's it helps you to manage the provisioning of uh, ALBs for your ingress resources and also NLB for your service resources. So it all depends on what kind of the way you architecture it and the way you set up your microservices and all that, right? So instead of you to manually deploy the ALB itself, the the ALB controller washes for this kind of event and automatically deploy them. Okay, so now what we're going to do right now is to first of all go ahead to deploy a load balancer using Terraform. Okay, now I'm just going to go over to my environment, to my Linux environment. So I'm just going to cd into my EKS. I have an EKS deployment, so I'm just um, going to open. First of all, I'm going to check what I have here. So I have all this file here, right? And so I'm just going to clear that and then open my Visual Studio Code from this directory. I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code from this directory, okay? So it's just going to take a little seconds to pop up. I so it's initializing. So it's kind of like this. I'm doing this for the first time today, so it's gonna take some time to come up, right? And just gonna close all these, and I'm gonna close all these ones. Don't need them for now. Okay. All right. So now you can see my you can see my Terraform deployment, my EKS deployment. So these are my Terraform configuration, Terraform files. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead to open terminal and okay. So I'm not gonna work as too hard to create all of this, right? So this is basically in a different when this is basically a different tutorial. So this tutorial this walkthrough is not all about how you can actually write the Terraform deployment configuration files, right? But it's just using the Terraform to deploy a KS cluster so we can proceed to carry out all the workflows, right? So I'm just going to go ahead to remove, come on. Mm, I don't need this yet. So this already in my environment, so I don't need it. So basically, what I want to do is that this is my module, right? So this is my AKS deployment module. So I have various environments. I have the dev environment, the prod environment, and then I have the UAT as well. So this module comprises of the EKS and the VPC cluster and remote backend, right? So now I want to deploy dev environments because yeah, I just want to use the this walkthrough is going to be essentially based on the dev environments, right? So this is the setup for my dev environment. These are my variables which are more important to me, right? Uh, so we're going to be deploying this cluster to we're going to be deploying to US West 2, and we're also going to the name of this is going to be um Visual EKS, or maybe I should just call it something. Let me call it let me call it the ALB. I'm going to change this now so it makes more sense to so that it has what's I'm going to say is the ALB controller, EKS cluster, right? EKS cluster. All right. So ALB controller, EKS cluster. So this name is more descriptive because this is what I want to do. All right. Okay. So I'm going the version I'm deploying is version 1.33. So, and this had the availabilities in US West 2A and US West 2B. So this is my CIDR block, right? And these are the private subnet and the public subnet. So I need the desired capacity of 3 and maximum capacity of 3 and a minimum capacity of 1. I'm using this T3 small instance and on-demand capacity, right? All right, so this is good. So I'm just going to save this file. Now, what I want to do is to first of all deploy using the workspaces. So I'm just going to say workspace list so I can so I can see what workspaces I have available um in these for my Terraform states, right? So you're just gonna pull the list of workspaces that I have and I'll see because I want to deploy to dev. I don't want to deploy to overwrite anything that I currently have in my environment for sure. So I just want to see. All right, so we can see we have three workspaces here. So we have the default workspace, we have the prod workspace, and we have the UAT workspace. Now, what I want to do is to deploy, since I'm deploying a dev cluster. So what I'm going to do is to deploy, is to create a, what I'm going to do is to create a dev workspace. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and, yeah, I'm going to call this dev. Okay, so I need to create a dev workspace, and immediately I create that dev workspace, is just going to switch over to the dev workspace, and then we can proceed to deploying the dev environment in that workspace. Awesome. So now the dev workspace has been created. So the next thing we're going to do is to actually proceed to our deployment process. So I'm going to clear this. Okay. So I'm just going to say Terraform plan. Um, so anyway, the repository is already initialized, but I can just go ahead to initialize it just for you to see. It's already initialized. So you can see that my backend, the state is already showing here, but I'm just gonna initialize the backend so you can see as well. It's gonna take some time to review the the state file so it can show us exactly what we currently have in the environment. It's going to pull the provider and awesome. Okay. So you see that the Terraform has been successfully initialized. Okay. So I'm just going to clear this. All right. And I'll proceed to saying Terraform. Um, so I want to check the plan first, right? Because I want to deploy the dev environment. So just going to check the plan to see what it's going to give to me. So I'm using the verify, and I'm pointing it to this here. So I'm just gonna copy this. I'm copying the relative path to make it more easier for me. I'm pasting the URL path here. So now it's just going to show us, like, it's gonna do a dry run, and that dry run is gonna give us the plan, the deployment plan, right? So you have to review the deployment plan first before proceeding if it's what you really want to deploy with the cluster, right? Um, yeah, this is going to go into AWS to pull states, right? Because the state is stored in the remote backend. So it's just going to go there and mm, pull that state for us to see. All right. So now you can see now we currently have the the plan. It has run the plan. So you can go ahead to review the plan. All right. It has like 25 resources that's going to be deployed. So you can just take your time to review the plan and you can see. So I'm the one that wrote all of this, so I know definitely what is going to deploy. Okay, so it's going to deploy 25 resources, all right, and so we can just scroll down to the bottom so we can see the 25 resources that are going to be deployed. Like you can see the plan summary. So you can see uh 25 resources to hard and zero to change and zero to destroy. All of these are the attributes. The cluster endpoint will be known after the deployments. The cluster name is going to be ALB Controller, aka cluster dev. And the ARN for both the cluster row and the node group is going to be known after the deployment as well. So the node group is as a this. And okay, so awesome. So we have all of this, right? So now I'm just gonna go ahead to clear this and proceed to the deployment with the deployment actually. So I'm just gonna change my I'm gonna just change my plan to apply, apply. And also since I already know what I'm gonna be deploying, I don't want to waste any time. I'm just gonna say auto approve. Doesn't show to approve. Okay. So now what this auto approve will do is that no the Terraform apply command is definitely going to run another plan and show you what it's going to deploy. And then you go ahead to say yes. So I don't want that. I don't want to type that yes in. So I just go ahead to approve it. Okay. So I'm just going to click, just going to press enter. So you can see it's going to take some time to run the plan again and then go ahead to auto approve it. So when we're done with that deployment, we would proceed to AWS and start the setting up of the OIDC process, right? So let's just wait for our EKS cluster to start the deployment. So we're waiting for Terraform to initialize that process right now. So it's just gonna wait a little bit for it to review and we start with the deployment. So currently, so it has already started the deployment, right? With the auto approve. Okay. So right now is currently deploying the VPC because the VPC, the EKS is dependent on the VPC. So the VPC has to completely deploy first before moving over to deploying the cluster. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is to first of all pause this video for some time, then come back when the deployment is complete. Because this walkthrough or this tutorial, this video is not essentially about Kubernetes, it's not about deploying Kubernetes using Terraform, but rather it's all about deploying the ALB controller. So because we don't have the cluster deployed in the environment, and I just want to show the process of using Terraform to deploy that. So we're going to do that and then move over to the console to confirm that, then pick some of the values to go ahead back into the terminal to start the process of the AWS load balancer controller deployment. Okay, so I'm going to pause this video now and we'll come back when the deployment completes. So finally, cluster has been deployed. Now what we're going to do is to go over to AWS console to check to confirm the deployments. Okay, so I'm just going to go over to console. I'm just going to refresh this. So let me refresh this to see. Now we have the ALB controller EKS cluster. Okay, so I'm just going to click into it and I'm going to click into it and we can see we have this is our cluster, all right? And I'm just going to click into compute so we can see the three desired nodes. So this is the node, these are our nodes that we have in this cluster. All right. So now what we're going to do is to proceed to actually to proceed with the we're going to proceed with the setting up or installation with the setting up of the OIDC. Okay. So when we set up the OIDC, then we proceed to the ALB controller deployment in this cluster. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go over to my Linux environment. And then when I go over to my Linux environment, I'm definitely going to connect to this cluster. So I'm going to connect to the cluster. So first thing, I'm going to say kubectl. So let me check the current context on which I'm connected to. I'm going to say config. I'm going to get contests. Okay. So I just want to see if I'm connected to any cluster. Um, Okay. So no, so you can see that I'm not connected to any cluster at all. So what I'm going to do is to say AWS EKS. Um, then I'm going to say update, update config. I'm going to do update config. Is this correct? I'm just going to update config, let me see, so that I can connect to the cluster. Update kube config. Okay, so the name of the cluster is, I'm going to copy this name of this cluster. I'll copy the name of this cluster and, oh no, I'm using this environment. I don't want to use Visual Studio Code. So I'm just going to paste the name of the cluster here. All right. So I'm going to give the vision. So the vision is US West 2. All right. So yeah. So let me just press enter here and see if we'll be able to connect to the cluster. So the context is going to change because this is going to create a kube file, a kube config file for us. All right. So it's going to put that token there so that this um, Linux server will be able to connect to this cluster. Now we've been connected to the cluster. So I'm just going to check, the what we're currently connected to. So you can see that we're currently connected to this cluster. Okay. So you can see we're currently connected to this cluster. So this is the current context, which shows this, and this is the cluster. All right. Also, you can also confirm this. You can just copy these. You can copy these, right? And then you can just go over to press Ctrl F and paste this here. So you can see this is the cluster that you're currently connected to in your environment, right? So I'm just going to clear the screen. So what I'm going to do right now is to proceed to setting up the OIDC. So the OIDC is very important, right? Because your ALB, when you set up your ALB controller, when you set up your ALB controller, it's it works for ingress traffic, right? And depending on what it says, it might deploy an ALB or an NLB. So it needs the permission, it needs the right permission, right, to be able to do that. So because of security, we don't allow like the EKS cluster the EKS cluster would like the EKS cluster has nodes that would be able to communicate to the API server to say, oh, can communicate to the Kubernetes API server to deploy particular resources. And that's Kubernetes API server. We have to communicate to the cloud controller to deploy those resources. But it doesn't really have the permission to do that. So the pod action is definitely going to fail, right? Or so normally what happens that once a pod is running inside a node, right, it will assume the privileges, we assume the role of that node to carry out operations like it called operations, right? So what we're doing, the OIDC, what is going to be doing when we're going to assign a role to a service account, and we're going to assign a role to a service account, and that role will what will be used to generate short-lived tokens that has the right permission for a pod or any other Kubernetes workload or component to be able to carry out operations on AWS, right? For instance, to deploy an ALB or an NLB or target, or an EC2 instance that will be used to load balance, right? So what we need to do is to go through the process of actually setting up the OIDC as an external authenticator mechanism, right? And then we have to associate that with this cluster that we already deployed. And when we do that, we'll definitely move over to creating the roles and assigning the permissions and all of that. So right now, what we're going to do is to first of all start by exporting some variables, right? You don't need to export that, but I'm going to export those variables so that my running the commands will be very easy. And some of the variables that I need to export is I'm going to export the cluster name, the region name, the account ID, AWS account ID, and also the VPC ID. Okay, so I'm just going to I'm going to start doing that now so that it's going to be quite easy for me to run my this. So what I'm going to do is to first of all reduce this. I like reducing it, so it's pretty, you know, compact for me. So I'm going to say export. I'm exporting the cluster name, cluster name. So I just want to have the cluster name is going to be my ALB that I created. So I'm just going to paste this. All right. So enter. So the next thing I'm going to do is to export the region. So the region is US West 2, which is Oregon. All right. So I'm just going to export the AWS account ID. So AWS account ID. So the AWS account ID, you can retrieve that from here. I'm going to close this and you can retrieve that from here. Come on. So you can retrieve that from here. When you click into these, you're just going to go ahead and copy. All right. So you go back to your environment and then paste it, just paste it here and then press enter. So the next thing I'm going to export is my VPC ID. I'm going to export the VPC ID. So I will retrieve the VPC ID from networking. Yeah. So I can either copy it here or I can go to my Visual Studio where I set it up as my output and copy it anywhere that I want, you know. I can take this. All right. So I'm just going to paste it in here and then awesome. So I've been able to set up I've been able to export most of the variables that I'll be needing for my operations. Okay. So I'm just going to click this. So the next thing I'm going to do is to fetch my OIDC ID. So I'm going to run a particular command to do that to make it more flexible for me to uh, okay. Now, this command is going to help me, you know, fetch the OIDC ID. So what I need is just this one. So this is the ID. Okay. So I'm going to export the OIDC ID. So the whole idea is just to ensure that I don't type a lot of commands when I'm doing that. So I'm just going to paste this. So yeah. So with this, I can move in properly into the setting up of the IAM roles and in associating the cluster and the IAM roles. So what I'm going to do now is to this cluster that we already deployed, I'm going to associate it with, I'm going to create like a trust relationship between the cluster and AWS IAM. So before I can do that, I need to first of all um, create I need to associate the OIDC and the cluster. Okay, so I'm going to run a command to do that, the EKCL command, EKSCTL commands, right? So the EKSCTL command is going to help me to, you're going to help me with the association. Yeah, so I'm going to paste the CTL command. So this EKCL util is going to associate the OIDC provider, right, with the cluster. So this is the cluster name. We already put the export that as a variables, and then it's going to put the association. So I'm just going to press enter. I'm just going to press enter. So it should go ahead to start the association. Okay. So, all right. So you can say we create an IAM open connector for this cluster in this region. And now it's telling you that it has already gone ahead to do that. All right. Awesome. So the next thing we're going to do is to the next thing we're going to do is to create an IAM role, right? We're going to create an IAM role, and the IAM role that we want to create is we're going to use the special we're going to use a particular JSON from GitHub that was developed by the Kubernetes Special Interest Group, right? And I'm going to try to show us that where that is now. So I'm going to say AWS, um, the ALB controller, Kubernetes. Okay. So I'm just going to look for the SIG. Okay. So I'm going to click into this one and um, so just go and check for the AWS loop subcontroller, special interest group. So we should have a file somewhere. Let me check. Okay, so what we're looking for is the policy, right? So this special interest group actually is um is a special interest group that handles, maintains, some very specific, important, high level, very important resources and components for Kubernetes, right? So what we're looking for right now is the policy that we need to deploy the AWS load balancer controller. So when I go into the documentation, um, I'm just going to walk through to install, right? And as you can see, we have different policies here. So this is what we're looking for. So I'm just going to click into the JSON, right? So this JSON already, you can see is a very large JSON. So it gives the, it gives the, it gives you the action, the IAM action to create service link roles and on um, all resources, right? So the string is going to be the load balancer, you know, AWS.com, right? So it's going to match for load balancing. So it gives you like a lot of actions, a lot of permissions on the load balancer, right? Can create a lot of stuff and all this stuff, right? So you can even go ahead to authorize security group ingress and revoke security group ingress as well. And yeah, so the JSON file is very, very large, right? So you're not expected to write this from scratch. So what you're gonna do is to actually use this JSON, right, in your deployment process. So what I'm gonna do now is to use call command to actually um deploy this JSON, right? So I'm just gonna deploy the JSON with call commands. So okay. So I'm just going to deploy it. So when I deploy it, right, I'm going to use it to create an IAM policy. Okay. So now I'm just going to check to see the file that has been created. I'm going to grab it and say IAM because now you can see it's actually IAM policy.json. So I'm just going to grab for IAM and so you can see we have the IAM Yeah, so I'm gonna use this IAM policy.json to create an IAM policy um in AWS, right? So just proceed. I'm just gonna press enter. All right, so now we've created a policy. So we created a policy, and this is the name of the policy that we created. It's called an AWS Load Balancer Controller IAM policy. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a service account. We're just going to create a service account. All right. So maybe I should just open this up a little bit more. So it's more, it has a lot of real estate for us to be able to explore what is actually happening over there. Okay. So I'm going to create the IAM service accounts. So this is the command to create the IS, service account, right? So it's going to go ahead to start creating the service account, and then it's using CloudFormation Stack to create um the service account in the cube namespace, the cube system namespace. Okay, so the service account is named AWS Load Balancer Controller. Yeah, so it's going to create the it's going to attach the policy that we created here. It's going to attach this policy, as you can see. It's going to attach this policy, and then it's going to override existing service account just in case you have any service account with the same name. It's just going to override it in, and if it's also in the same region as well, it's going to override it. Okay, so we'll just wait for a couple of seconds for CloudFormation stack for the CloudFormation stacks to complete because it's deploying the stack, right? And is waiting for CloudFormation to be able to do that, right? Do to create the stack with the hands-on IAM cube system, AWS Load Balancer Controller role. Okay, so we're just gonna wait for it to complete. So when it completes, we are going to go ahead to start using ham to start the deployment of the AWS ALB controller. Okay, so let's just wait up a little bit. But why it's actually coming up, we're just gonna go over to, I think we should just wait for it to complete here, and then we'll move over to move over into the AWS console so we can check the resources that we've created so far. Okay, we'll do a time correlation to see when this was actually created. Okay, so all our creations should be within the last 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, so let's just wait up a little bit. Why is it actually deploying? It's creating this. Yeah, this command is not supposed to take very long. So what I'm going to do is to just abort it and try again to see why it's taking this long. All right, funny enough, I wanted to abort it and then it was already created. Awesome. So let me check. Let me just confirm truly if it actually created, right? So I'm just going to get, it said, created this, right? It created the AWS load balancer controller in the kube system namespace. So I'm just going to check it first to confirm this because I don't trust it. So I'm just going to do get SA and I'm going to check with the kube system namespace. Okay. So what I'm looking for is actually, I'm trying to grab the AWS load. Okay. So let's see if it's going to be there. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I get it. I get it. So I'm just gonna go ahead to correct the mistake, and it's not queued in, so it actually keeps it here. And let's see, it actually did create the. All right, awesome. So yeah, it created it, but I don't know why it took so long. It was supposed to take that long. Awesome. So now what we're gonna do, we're going to go ahead to. So first of all, before we go ahead to before we go ahead to start deploying installing the AWS load balancer controller, we'll first of all check you need M so that we can be able to use the M chart repository to deploy. We can use the EKS M chart repository to deploy the AWS load balancer controller. So you just want to check if you have M first. You need to install ham. You can check that on Google to see how you can install ham. So we're going to check here if we have ham installed in our system. Okay, you can see I already have M installed. So I'm also going to do M repo, repo list, okay, to see if we have, all right. So I already have the EKS, I already have the EKS charts in my uh, in my environment. So normally, if you want to do that, you could just you could just say M. If you want to add a repo, you can say M repo add. Then you see the name that you want. Right. For now, I have EKS. Right. So you can just set EKS and then you put the URL. Like for instance, you just put this URL. You can look for the URL online as well. So once you are on enter, it's going to tell you that if you don't have it, it's going to create it for you. But if you have it, it's going to tell you already has exists with the same configuration. So definitely it's going to skip it. So that's what's going to happen in my case. So because you can see that I already have the EKS chart available. So I can now use this chart to actually deploy my ALB controller. Okay. So what I'm going to do first of all is to actually say to update the repo. Okay, so I'm going to say M repo updates. All right, so I'm going to find the name that I want to, the name of the repo is EKS. So I'm just going to say EKS. So meaning that I want to update it to the latest one, just in case there's any modification. So we ensure we're using the latest version of the EKS charts, right? Awesome. So now that we've updated the M repository in our local environment, so what we're going to do is to go ahead to deploy the AWS load balancer controller using ham, right? So we're going to use ham install to do that. All right. So just gonna, so now this command is going to help us we're going to use ham install to install the ALB controller from the EKS um, um, we're gonna install the ALB controller to this namespace, and we're gonna set the cluster to the cluster name, and we're gonna use the service account create. We're gonna set this to false because we already created the service account. Now, if we set this to true, it's not gonna have the permission that we want it to have. So we're gonna set the service account name to this service account that we already created at the top, and then we're going to set the VPC ID to the VPC ID of the cluster itself. Okay, so we're going to run this and awesome. So it's very, very fast. So you can see that the AWS load balancer controller is already installed. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is to just check to really check if the to confirm to carry out some confirmation about the the keep control. Right. Sorry, I'm going to check to check the Kubernetes cluster for the load balancer controller. Okay, so I'm just gonna say first of all, check the deployment. Get get deploy. So you can set deployment. So cube system. So AWS load balancer. So I'm just going to copy the name of this one, AWS load balancer. So let me just put the, so I want to check this namespace. All right. So I'm just going to check for if we have that in. All right. So we can see we have the load balancer controller. So we have two deployments. So you can see the both of them are actually running. Awesome. So I'm going to check the port as well. So I'm going to say kubectl, get ports, and then I'm going to paste the port here. I'm going to copy these. And I'm going to check in this namespace, the chip system namespace. Okay. Okay. So no problem. So actually supposed to use the ports, but let's see if we're gonna get these. So all right. So what I'm gonna do now is to just do kubectl get ports, and I'm gonna do that in the kube system namespace. Then I'm gonna grep um I don't know why I'm making some kind of mistake here. This is basic, but I'm just making some mistake here. So come on, this is what I'm just looking for, right? So we have two ports running. So we have we have two ports running. Yeah, so these are the ports that are running for these load balancer controller. Okay. Awesome. So right now we can just go ahead to check some of this deployment in our cube our EKS cluster. So I'm just going to the resources and I'm going to check for the ports. So you can see, so these are the ports that deployed and you can see it's running. And this was just 5 minutes ago when we did the deployment. And we can go to the replica sets. You can see the replica set. We have the AWS controller, and then we have port count, which is two, those two ports that you saw. And then we have the deployments. We have already confirmed the deployments. You can see the deployments as well. And awesome. So I'm just gonna also try, the, I'm gonna explore the IAM so we can see the OIDC provider that we did created. So I'm just going to go over here and open these up to the IAM console. So basically, we are done with the installation of our load AWS load balancer controller. So now we just want to check a couple of things, right? So identity provider is what I want to check. We have an identity provider. So I'm just going to check the identity provider. And so we have this one that was created not quite long. Created this one at the bottom. So this is the identity provider we created our for our cluster. Okay, so I'm just going to click that, and yeah, so this was created today, which is September 28th. Okay, and it was created during the process of our creation of um the whole IDC when we actually associated the whole IDC provider to our cluster. So that was when this was created, right? Awesome. So now what we're gonna do is we've already seen that we successfully deployed uh, the ALB controller. We successfully deployed that, and now what we want to do is to see it in action. So what we're going to do is to deploy, uh, let's say a resource. We're going to deploy an application. We're going to deploy the services, and we're also going to deploy the ingress. So when we do that, what we're going to see is the ALB controller in action where it automatically deploys an ALB for you, right? So we want to first of all confirm. We'll go over to the EC2 instance session, and we can see that we currently don't have any load balancer in the environment, right? So I'm just going to click into EC2. So when I click into EC2, it's going to show that we don't have any load balancer currently in this environment. So I'm just going to move down to load balancers. So I'm going to move down to load balancer and then click the load balancer. Okay, so we don't have any load balancer, right? So the main aim of the ALB controller is to watch for ingress traffic, right? Ingress events. And once it sees those ingress events, it's going to read, understand the request, and then deploy the type of resources like an ALB or an NLB. So we're going to go then into environment and then uh, clear. So what I'm going to do right now is I have some, I have some microservices, for my Kubernetes. So I'm just going to go over to that place. So I'm going to say and check my, um, I have some Kubernetes. Okay. So in my cloud deployments, I'm going to go right into cloud deployments. Okay. Then I'll clear these. So cloud deployments have Kubernetes. So I'm just going to go into Kubernetes. Okay, so I'm going to clear this on L. So for the Kubernetes, I want to deploy the front end proxy, right? So the reason why, so this is an application that contains all of these services, right? Over 25 services. So I want to deploy the front-end proxy. And the reason why I want to deploy the front-end proxy is because this is the access to this microservice, to this application. So it will give us the leverage to actually deploy, uh, it's give us leverage to deploy an ingress, right? An ingress. Okay, so just going to go into the front end. I'm going to cd into front end and proxy. All right, so I'm going to clear this. Then we see. So right now we have the deployment, and then we have the services.yaml. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead to deploy both the deployment and also the services. But before I do that, what I want to do is to create an ingress file. Yeah, I want to create an ingress resources. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go to my Visual Studio Code and okay, maybe I should just open a new Visual Studio Code from that directory. So just code, -c, So it's just going to take a second, and then it's going to pull open up the Visual Studio Code in this directory for me. So what we want to do is to just build up a new, um, we just want to write a new ingress resource, okay? Okay, so now this is open, so I'm just going to go ahead to create a new file. I'm going to call this ingress.yaml, okay? So I'm just opening it fully. So we just go ahead to start creating the ingress resource, right? So I'm just going to say the include this here, the API. I don't want to use Copilot. Come on, it's the API. So we're going to do the API version, and this is going to be networking, then KHS Ohio /v1. Okay, so we can actually get the ingress resource from the let's just put the ingress, KHS ingress. Okay, so just click on this to go copy exactly what we want. So okay, so we can just copy this one and then just go over to our Visual Studio Code and paste this there. All right. So just paste. Now, what you're going to do is to modify to what you want it to be. Okay. So I'm just going to change this name here and put it the name of my service to the front. Just going to be front end and proxy. So this is going to be front end proxy. Okay. And so the annotation is going to be, I'm going to change this annotation, but I want the class name, my English class name is going to be ALB. So ALB. And so I'm going to modify my host. I'm going to add the host to this path. Onto this part, I'm going to put on host. And I'm going to call this. Um, then my HTTPS is going to be this. Name of this one. Yep. Okay. So my path is just going to be the root. Okay. And so I'm just going to put this to be 8080. All right. So basically, I just want to create like, I'm just going to create demo ingress that I can use for this. So I'm going to check annotations for the ALB. So I'm going to say the ALB annotations. So I want it to be okay. I'm going to take this one and scroll down a little bit more. So for the ALB, I want it to be the scheme. I want it to be internet facing. So I'm just gonna go down a little bit more so I can, yep, check. Okay, so my target type is gonna be IP. So I'll copy this one. Then I'm gonna be using IP. Okay, so I'm going over to the space and I'm pasting. I'm gonna remove this. I need this. Okay, so this is gonna be IP. Okay, so the next one I need is the scheme. So I want it to be internet facing. So it's can either be internet facing or it's gonna be internal, but just want this to be internet facing. So I might just have to do Control F and then push scheme. Okay, so this is either internal or internet facing, right? So the default value is internal, so I'm going to change that to internet facing. Okay, so just going to paste it here. Mm, okay, so now this host name you can actually put anything you want because I'm not trying. I'm just trying to create something, but I already have a domain. So my domain, my demo domain that I normally use is okay, Richards the app the online. Yeah, so this is just my demo domain that I use for some projects, right? So I'm just gonna leave this here. I can leave this as test or anything that I want. Okay, and I'm going to save this, or I can move into the services and see the name of the service here. So the name of the service here is so the name of the service here is this. So I'm going to copy this and paste this in so that it will be able to locate that service there. Okay, so we won't have any issue. So I'm going to paste this here and really come on. I thought we had this and I should paste this, copy the whole of it, and I'm going to paste this in my services the name of my service, and I'm going to save this. Okay, I'm just going to save that. So now I'm going to go ahead to deploy to deploy this. So I'm say cube CTL apply like F. What I'm deploying first is I'm going to deploy this. All right, the deployment. So when I'm done with that, I'm just going to go ahead to deploy the SVC, which is the services. As you see, it run. I'm going to go ahead to deploy the FC system now. And so while that is being deployed, I just wanted to move over to this part here. So we have to check pretty well. So the next thing I'm going to deploy is my ingress. All right. So it's my ingress. No. So I'm going to deploy the ingress. And all right, so I'm going to refresh this and let's see what happened here. Awesome. So now you can see, we can see that automatically by itself, that the by itself, it's automatically started provisioning um the it started provisioning an ALB, right? So you can see that it's currently provisioning, and that happened when we went to when we created our ingress, right? And yeah, so we can see that the ALB by itself is actually functioning very well, right? And it's perfect. It's working pretty good, right? Awesome. So I'm just going to click into the front end proxy so we can maybe see what's happening here. We're going to see what's happening here. Okay. So it's still provisioning. So this holder property. All right. Awesome. So right, now we can actually see. I just want the provisions to be done. I just want the state changed so it moves from provisioning to to available or active. So it's still provisioning. But from now we can actually see that when we did the when we created our ingress, right, automatically the automatically the ALB controller intercepted that request, and then it read the request, understood the request, and then went ahead to start creating an application load balancer, right? So you can see this is an application load balancer. All right. So we can see for sure that our objective is actually achieved, right? So what we're currently waiting for is for the deployment, the ALB deployment to complete, right? The we've been able to deploy the ALB controller, and then we set up the OIDC provider connector. We're able to set up the OIDC provider in the AWS environment. We're able to associate the OIDC provider with the cluster, the Kubernetes cluster, and also we're able to assign the IAM policy to the role and assign that role to the service account for the EKS cluster. And we moved ahead to deploying the ALB controller, and the ALB controller by itself automatically helps us to deploy an ALB upon upon the deployment of an ingress, right? An ingress controller, sorry, an ingress, right? An ingress resource. So when we deploy this ingress resource, yeah, it automatically deployed for us uh, an ALB. Okay, so basically we can see we've been able to demonstrate that the functionality of the ALB controller. Okay, so we're gonna stop this walkthrough here. And until next time, thank you so much for your time and we truly appreciate your support. Bye.